Hi, my name is Italid Tiano, and today I'm going to talk about the ongoing phosphate pollution crisis in Gabès, Tunisia, and the nationwide protest that began October 21st, 2025. This event offers a powerful example of how pollution, waste management failure, and human environment interactions can escalate into a national environmental justice movement. So, to start off, let me give a quick overview of what's actually happening in Gabès. Gabès is a coastal city in southern Tunisia, right next to one of the country's biggest phosphate processing plants. For decades, this plant has leaked chemicals and dumped toxic waste into the air and into the Gulf of Gabès. According to the Associated Press, in October 2025, a new leak sent dozens of children and adults to the hospital, and this incident only sparked major protests in both Gabès and later in the capital, Tunis. This crisis didn't just suddenly appear, though. It's the result of years and years of industrial pollution and very little environmental protection. Now that we know the basics, let's look more closely at why this pollution problem is so serious. This is a perfect example of pollution and waste management failure, which we covered in Module 6. The phosphate plant releases phosphogypsum waste and chemical effluents into the air and the sea. Agrimi explains that people regularly report trouble breathing, skin burning, and just an overall decline in air quality. In the water, industrial dumping has caused huge damage to marine life. Nassif reports that fish populations in the Gulf have collapsed, which impacts local food sources and the fishing economy. So here, poor waste management isn't just an environmental issue. It becomes a social and economical problem too. This brings us to Module 7, Human-Environment Interaction. In Gabès, people's everyday lives depend heavily on the environment, especially fishing and traditional oasis agriculture. Parikh describes how residents instantly notice that difference when they leave Gabès and go to nearby towns. The air smells better, there's no chemical haze, and the scenery looks normal. But in Gabès, polluted air and damaged ecosystems have become part of their daily life. Nassif also shares testimonies from fishermen who say that their catches have decreased dramatically because of the marine ecosystem is so damaged. This really shows how environmental harm directly affects people's job, health, and culture. And as these impacts got worse, the community response only grew stronger. So let's look at the environmental justice side of the situation. Environmental justice is a major part of what's happening in Gabès. The communities facing the pollution are mostly working class residents who don't have a lot of political power. They've been protesting for years, but in October, the leak pushed things to a breaking point. The Associated Press reported that protests in Gabès turned violent after police tried to disperse the crowds, and Arab News wrote that hundreds of people marched into Nice, showing that the crisis had become a national issue. So this isn't just about pollution. It's about fairness, access to clean air and water, and people demanding to be heard. To explain the science behind what's being released into the environment, let's connect this to the phosphorus cycle. We learned in class that phosphorus is part of a natural cycle, and it's essential for agriculture. But when phosphorus minerals are processed on an industrial scale, they create harmful byproducts. In Gabès, these byproducts got released into both the air and water. Excess phosphorus disrupts marine ecosystems by altering water chemistry and harming species that once thrived in the Gulf of Gabès. So the science helps explain why the pollution has caused such severe ecological damage. Now that we've covered the cause and effects, let's look at some of the solutions experts have suggested. Residents and activists aren't just protesting, they're also pushing for solutions. Agrimi lists several possible strategies, like updating the phosphate plant with cleaner technology, improving these waste treatment facilities, and restoring the damaged ecosystems these facilities have caused. These ideas show that the crisis isn't hopeless. There are real steps Tunisia can take to reduce pollution and protect both people and the environment. In conclusion, the Gabès phosphate pollution crisis shows how industrial waste, poor environmental regulation, and long-term neglect can build into a major national issue. It shows how closely our health and our environment are connected, and how pollution can lead to economic, social, and political consequences. Most importantly, it highlights environmental justice, the idea that everyone deserves clean air and water, and that communities should have a voice in decisions that affect their health. Thank you.